let's get ready together and chat about how I track my cycles naturally, yeah? Brought my whole kit into the car because if you have children, you know that nowhere in my house is safe, and this is the only spot to film for now. Someday, and I'm the girl version of Mr. Beast, I will have my own studio, and it will not be my car. Okay, in this is all of my makeup and all the fertility stuff that I'm going to talk to you about today. So let's get into it. First things first, obviously this is not medical advice. This is purely anecdotal. This is my experience. But I wanted to share with you some things that I have done. I've been practicing NFP, if you will. No, it is not the rhythm method. I've been practicing NFP for over 10 years. I started when I was engaged to Steve. If I keep hitting my mic, I'm so sorry. I was engaged to Steve because I have PCOS and I had a feeling that it might be difficult for me to get pregnant. So I wanted to be on top of like what my cycle was doing. I've not ever used hormonal birth control, and I was not interested in using hormonal birth control just to mask like the symptoms of PCOS and give me a false cycle, and et cetera, et cetera. So I went to NFP. It stands for Natural Family Planning if you're not familiar with it. What it is basically a scientific way to track your cycles naturally to achieve or avoid pregnancy, or just to understand your fertility. So if you're not trying to get pregnant or avoid pregnancy and you're just trying to understand your fertility better, you can stick around. This is for you too. I will share the 2 methods that I learned personally that I have been using off and on for the last 10 years. I will share all of my resources, everything that I like, literally the machine that I use, the little ovulation sticks that I use, the apps that I use, so that wherever you are in your fertility finding journey, you can pick what you think is best for you. I do personally work with an instructor for the method that I'm using now, and I would suggest that. So if you're just trying to kind of start out understanding your fertility and knowing when your cycle is, and you're someone who has a normal, regular cycle, you might be able to use the methods like the app and the ovulation sticks that I'll show you. If you're someone like me who was trying to achieve or avoid pregnancy and you want like a greater whole understanding of your body and all of that stuff, I would suggest looking for an instructor who can guide you, because I also don't want you to be like, Katie told me to do this and I half did it, and so now I'm pregnant, and do not put that on me. So there are 3 formal versions of NFP that I know about, and if you are an instructor of another method that I don't mention, please chime in the comments. But there's the Creighton method, the Marquette method, and the symptothermal method. I have not done symptothermal. I believe that is basically tracking your temperature, figuring out when you ovulate based on the rise in temperature in the fall, having sex around those days to achieve or avoid pregnancy, etc., etc. The Creighton method is what I started off with 10 years ago, and Steve and I were engaged. I was told that that would be the best for me since I had PCOS and really irregular cycles, and that it would be able to help track my mucus and all of that fun stuff. For me, that method was pretty time intensive because you basically have to, every time you go to the bathroom, get some mucus, yes, cervical mucus, stretch it between your fingies, ever said fingies, like see what it looks like. So if it's like egg white, aka clear and stretchy, and there's like literally like so many aspects, like 10kL is like the most fertile mucus. I'm not even gonna get into this, but it's like tacky or sticky, then you're like it's not fertile. Basically you have to find your like peak fertility day by looking at your mucus, and then you have this coinciding chart with stickers, and I really have not done the sticker chart in a long time, so if that's different, let me know. But it was very time intensive, like to do it correctly, right? To follow all the rules, especially if you're someone who's trying to avoid pregnancy and you want to like follow the rules. But I was doing it because I was not yet trying to get pregnant. I was just trying to learn about my changing body, my PCOS, and have a good sense of kind of what I was getting myself into. I worked with an instructor on the Creighton method and did that for many years. It got to a point where it kind of just, again, this is not according to the rules, so please don't follow my lead if you're actually trying to super avoid a pregnancy. I would just check my mucus and kind of have a good sense of where I was based on that. The hard part about that is sometimes you have constant mucus, sometimes you have no mucus. Sometimes with PCOS, even if you have mucus, it doesn't mean you're ovulating, because PCOS is just so fun. I was not ovulating for a while. Anyways, I feel like that method was overall very difficult for me, but I did learn a lot from it, because now I use it kind of as like a backup to what I'm doing. So I use this other method called the Marquette method, which I'll tell you about in a second. And then I also use the Creighton, like checking my mucus as like this is what the machine says. And also my mucus is doing this, my body is doing this, right? But I do really appreciate having that, because I feel like I learned a lot about my body. I learned a lot about how things work, a lot about ovulation. You could get pregnant from sperm 5 days before. I feel like there's so much of a disservice done, so little knowledge given to us about like how it all actually works. I would love to see this taught like more extensively, not just like don't ever have sex or don't. Anyways, I'm not going to get into this politics, but giving women more knowledge about like what's actually going on in terms of ovulation and all of that fun stuff. Okay, because it took me until I was in my 20s to even know this. So I did the Creighton method for many years, and it did help me. I was just never going to be a person who was doing a sticker chart. The method that I've been following now postpartum is called the Marquette method, and this was shared with me in like one of my pregnancy groups. And so I was like, you know what, why don't we try this? Because it seemed like even when I was checking my mucus and using my ovulation strips, I wasn't getting a clear ovulation, and that could have just been postpartum. But I also felt really hesitant because I was trying not to get pregnant right after having a C-section with an infant and a toddler. So I wanted something that seemed like it was going to be a little bit more straightforward, less work, and clear in terms of, is my body like trying to have a baby or is it not? So I got my cycle back 3 months postpartum, 4 months postpartum, super fun, even though I was breastfeeding every second of my life. The first cycle was really long, but I started working with an instructor and she was really, really helpful. I'm not going to get into the whole thing because I'm not an instructor, but I'll share in general what I do. I'm sure there's people who do this without an instructor to just like check their fertility. And now I feel confident going forward, kind of doing it on my own now that I know the method. So really it's just kind of in the start, in the learning process. Okay, I'm taking this lipstick off because I changed my mind. Very simplified terms, the Marquette method talks about figuring out what cycle you are in terms of like postpartum or regular cycles, and using this clear blue fertility monitor, looks like this, powering up. Meow. Okay. Low. It's a low day. It's a low day. You know what that means. If you know me in real life, no, you don't. It comes with these very expensive, literally costs the price of my car test strips. Okay. Thankfully, you don't have to use a ton of them every second. Unless you're postpartum and you're learning your cycle is 100 years long and you're going through these like there is no problem with the economy right now. Anyways, you turn your little machine on, you get a little cup, you do your little pee-pee, you stick your little stick in, should I say you stick your little stick in again, depending on what your test results say. Then it's like doot, 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 doot for 5 minutes, and then it gives you, bing, a result. It'll either say low, meaning you're good to go, high, meaning maybe you shouldn't try, and peak, which means you shall not pass. If it gives me a peak reading, that means I will be soon to ovulate. I am sure to ovulate fairly soon, and I should probably not be engaging in activities that would cause a child if I am trying to avoid having another child right now. If you are trying to have another child, the peak is like, it's time. All bets are off. Everyone's welcome. Well, no. Depending on what your goals are, yeah, you get it. If you're someone who's just trying to figure out when you're ovulating and when you could expect your period to come, the peak would give you indication that then you would enter soon the 2-week wait, aka the time in between ovulation and your period. And usually about 2 weeks later, your period arrives. Obviously that will change depending on postpartum because usually the luteal phase is a lot shorter then. So I have been using this method effectively for about 5 or 6 months, which is really great. It has caught peak moments for me. I know that it works as well too because I was like hesitant having PCOS and being like, is this actually going to be something that I can rely on with my way my cycle is? I feel like it just gives me really good peace of mind. Even if you're not trying to have a kid, I think it's really beneficial to know what your cycle is doing, to know what your body is doing. And you could use something like this to better track your health in general as a woman. Not the best angle, but I cannot see in this business. Okay. I think there are pros and cons to both method. Again, I know nothing about the symptothermal method, so if anyone's done that and wants to chime in and likes it, that might be something that you look into as well. 2 biggest cons for each. I feel like Creighton, though thorough, is very time intensive. Marquette, though very precise, is cost prohibitive because a lot of it is like expensive startup costs, and then the tests themselves are expensive to keep doing. So if you're not in a place where you're trying super hard to avoid or achieve pregnancy, or you have a normal cycle, or you're just trying to kind of get started in learning more about your health, fertility, something that I did in between these two when I was open to having kids but not trying super hard and just trying to get a good sense of where I was with my cycle was using an app and using ovulation strips. I used my knowledge of Creighton. These ovulation strips, show you them, okay? With these, if the test line is darker, same color or darker than the control line, that is considered a positive ovulation test. If it's lighter, it's not, but you will see it increase in lightness as you get closer to ovulating. I do find these to be effective, because this is what I was using when I got pregnant with Steven, and this is what I was using when I got pregnant with Daisy, even though I wasn't being super strict about either method. Now I'm being strict about the other method because I'm not ready to have a baby yet. But also, I would like to have another baby, so I'm hoping that the strictness of the Marquette method, the precision of it, will help me when I'm ready to try again, because it's literally detecting estrogen and the LH surge, well, more so than these, which are a little bit more of a guessing game. The app I love more than anything to track my cycles and use with those ovulation sticks is the Ovia app. I also use this app for pregnancy with Daisy and Steven. I like their pregnancy one, and I like their fertility app. I think it's really thorough and it's really accessible. It's also really great so that when you go to the doctor and they're like, when was your last period? And you're like, I don't know, someday in January. You get your period, you can mark it down. And then even if you're not doing any of these other things, if you're someone with a normal cycle, you could potentially be like, oh, I could generally expect my period soon because I had it on this day. So if nothing else, download this app, and the next time you have your period, mark it and try to get an idea of when you can expect your period, instead of just flying by the seat of your pants on when your favorite friend is going to arrive. Also, if you're like me and you love in the 2-week wait to take every pregnancy test you've ever owned, those clear blue ones are really fun for when you are pregnant and you want to do like an aesthetic photo that's like, I am pregnant. But let me introduce you. See these babies? They're cheaper. They're extra sensitive, like me. And they come in like a 25 pack, okay? So you can test to your little heart anxiety desires. So 25 tests and these little things. Again, I will link all of this stuff in the description box, everything I talked about today. One last thing I want to share that I forgot to share is that I use one specific supplement that has really helped me with PCOS. I've done a couple reels on this. I've talked about it before. It's called Ovasitol. It's a mixture of myo-inositol and dichloroinositol, and it's supposed to help with shortening cycles and insulin resistance and like hormonal acne and a lot of things. And I do find that it really has done those things for me. It has helped. It has made a huge difference. I used it in pregnancy. I know these things are purely anecdotal, but I used it in pregnancy. I did not get gestational diabetes either time. I'm using it postpartum, and it is helping shorten my cycles. I do think it helped with egg quality and getting pregnant. Like I said, I tried a ton of ovulation medications, and I'm not saying one thing got me pregnant, but a lot of different things can aid, and I do think one of these things helped. So I always have a discount code for that. I will put that in the description as well, because it's literally been a game changer for me and my favorite supplement, and really the only thing besides like iron and a consistent prenatal that I take to help manage PCOS. So we'll share that below as well. In sum, download the app, get the little test strips, so that you can kind of see where your body is, what your body's doing. If you are regular, if you have PCOS like me, maybe a more intense method would help you. If you're really trying to avoid or achieve pregnancy without birth control or without other medications, which there's nothing wrong with that. I used Clomid, I forget what it's called. Basically, I used any ovulation medication that I could, and none of them worked. I did like a million rounds of all of them. I ended up just getting pregnant on my own. If you're like me and postpartum and really trying to avoid, it might help to find an instructor and do a more intense, precise method. And if you have any tips or things that have worked for you or stuff that I didn't mention, I would love to hear from you in the comments. If you want to hear more about this, if you have any questions, again, I am not a medical professional. We all know that. I am sharing my personal experience because I do think it's important for women to at least know what's going on in their body. I really do believe that the more that you know about your fertility, the more confident you'll feel advocating for yourself. And overall, it's just benefit. To know yourself is to love yourself. Is that something? I don't know. Anyway, thanks for being here. You're the best. Bye.